Welcome. You're here now, and the world can be quiet for a while. The day is behind you, and there's no need to do anything more. Just lie back, if you like, and let your mind drift as we take a slow journey through the forgotten corners of history. Tonight, we are setting sail, not with the fanfare of heroes or the drama of conquest, but with the quieter, steadier rhythm of ordinary lives spent at sea. This is not the story of polished decks and crisp uniforms. It is not one of sea monsters or treasure maps. It is the story of damp wood and salted biscuits, of men who worked, waited, and endured beneath the wide and indifferent sky. We are stepping aboard a 16th century galleon, a ship of sails and creaking timber, moving slowly across the ocean under the weight of its ambition and its wariness. We will not rush. We will follow the steady pace of wind and water, the slow passage of days, and the quiet rituals that shaped life on board. Later, we will turn our attention to the ambitions and downfall of Sir Walter Raleigh, whose final voyage led not to glory, but to disappointment and silence. Then we will visit the resting places of ships that never returned, the wrecks of the Spanish Main lost to reef and storm. Finally, we will enter the Admiral's quarters, where the table was set with silver and dried fruit, and the air was thick with both civility and suspicion. But first, we begin not with captains or maps, but with the men who worked the decks, those who woke before dawn, chewed their biscuits slowly, and stared out at a horizon that never changed. It is just before morning. The ship rocks gently on the open sea. Below deck, the lantern light is dim, casting faint amber hues against the curved wooden beams. You lie in a hammock, one of dozens strung between support posts. The air is close and carries the scent of salt, sweat, and damp rope. Around you, there is the low murmur of sleeping men, the occasional shift of fabric, and the slow creak of timber adjusting to the sea's rhythm. Overhead, the boards groan softly as the galleon sways with the tide. There is no privacy here, no space for solitude. Men sleep stacked in rows, hammocks layered one above the next, each suspended in a narrow slice of space. One man coughs quietly in the dark. Another sighs and turns. It is a restless kind of sleep, often broken by noise or motion or the endless dampness that seeps into every corner of the ship. When the watch bell rings, the day begins. There is no sunrise below deck, only the movement of others as the next shift awakens. Your feet touch the wooden planks, rough and cold, and you begin another day. Breakfast is simple. A cup of beer, flat and slightly sour, and a biscuit of hardtack that resists your teeth. It is dry, nearly inedible, unless softened in liquid. The biscuits often bear tiny holes, signs of the weevils that nest inside. Most men eat around the insects, or simply ignore them. Hunger has a way of silencing revulsion. Sometimes there is salted meat, pork, or beef preserved in heavy barrels packed with coarse salt. The meat is tough and fibrous. It must be boiled for hours, but fresh water is rationed carefully. On many ships, there is not enough to spare for cooking, and the meat must be chewed slowly and swallowed with beer or wine, which lasts longer than water and spoils less quickly, though it too becomes sour in the heat. The work begins soon after. The sails must be trimmed to meet the wind, the rigging inspected for wear, the deck scrubbed clean, not for beauty, but for health. Without constant cleaning, lice, fleas, and rot would spread unchecked. The brooms are made of bundled twigs. The men scrub with salt water and bare hands. Shoes are uncommon. Leather rarely survives long in such a wet environment. Most men go barefoot, their soles hardened by splinters and bruises. The sea never leaves the ship. It clings to every surface, seeps into the wood, the ropes, the clothes. Nothing ever fully dries. Dampness becomes a second skin. Your clothing is simple. A wool tunic or shirt, a pair of breeches, a worn cap. These are rarely washed. They are stained with tar and salt and sweat. They carry the smell of the ship, a mix of mold, body, and brine. And always there are lice. They burrow into seams, hide beneath cuffs and collars. Men scratch without thinking, just another motion in the day. There is no real remedy. You learn to live with them, as with the rocking of the sea. The ship itself groans like a tired animal. Masts sway above. The sails flap and billow. The wind is constant but fickle. Sometimes it dies entirely, and the ship drifts, sails slack, the ocean still as glass. Other times, storms rise quickly, and the deck tilts sharply underfoot. Rain lashes down in sheets. Men struggle to hold ropes and tighten canvas as waves break across the bow. In storms, accidents happen easily. No one dives in after them. A ship cannot turn quickly, and even if it could, it would likely be too late. Those lost at sea are mourned quietly, their names remembered for a few days, then less and less. Health is fragile aboard a galleon, and a few bottles of alcohol. Wounds are bandaged, sometimes cauterized. Teeth are pulled with iron tongs. There is no anesthesia. Men endure, or they don't. Sickness moves quickly. Dysentery spreads through the water barrels and the latrines. It weakens men, leaves them unable to work, and eventually takes their strength entirely. The latrines are little more than planks at the ship's edge, dangerous in rough seas. Many fall ill, some never recover. And then there is scurvy, the slow, creeping disease of deficiency. A man might look healthy one week and too frail to stand the next. Some captains bring citrus or preserved greens, but such provisions are rare and quickly exhausted. Still, men find small joys. In the evenings, when the sky is clear, they gather on deck and play at dice or carve bits of wood into tokens. They sing songs, often crude, often repetitive, but comforting in their familiarity. There is laughter. Sometimes there is companionship. It does not erase the hardship, but it gives it shape, gives it rhythm. Nights are long. The stars seem closer at sea, and the wind whistles softly through the rigging. Below deck, the air is close again. Men return to their hammocks, climbing into the same damp fabric, curling their bodies into the same cramped space. You lie down, sore from the day's work. The scent of tar and salt water lingers. Someone nearby is already snoring. You close your eyes and try not to think about how long the voyage will be. There is no fixed date, no guarantee of landfall, only the sea and the steady creak of the hull, and the hope that someday there will be land and fruit and fresh water. But tonight there is only the ship and the slow rocking of the ocean, and the silence of men who have learned to endure. Now, let us leave the creaking timbers of the galleon behind, just for a little while. Let the hammocks sway gently in the dark. Let the sails ripple softly in the breeze. We turn now toward a different kind of sea story, not of sailors and decks, but of a man whose name still echoes in the pages of history. A man both celebrated and condemned. a man who sailed not just across oceans, but through the unpredictable tides of ambition, disappointment, and fate. Imagine yourself once more aboard a ship, but this time the air is different. The year is 1617. England is uneasy. The queen who once ruled with sharp poise and favor is gone. Elizabeth is dead. In her place sits King James, colder and more cautious, suspicious of those who once held influence at the royal court. And among them, a man named Walter Raleigh. Sir Walter Raleigh, explorer, courtier, soldier, writer, and now a man trying to salvage what little remains of his reputation. Once favored, now fallen. Once knighted, now imprisoned. Raleigh had spent over a decade confined within the stone walls of the Tower of London. Not in a dungeon exactly, but in rooms with barred windows and quiet floors. He studied, he wrote, he aged, and then he was offered a single chance. Permission to sail. One final voyage. One last attempt to recover Spanish gold, rumored to lie in a long-lost city along the Orinoco River in South America. The conditions of this voyage were strict. Raleigh could seek riches, but he must avoid conflict with Spain. England and Spain were now at peace, a fragile balance held together by mutual exhaustion. King James gave his reluctant blessing, but he warned, if Raleigh broke the peace, he would answer for it with his life. And so Raleigh set sail. Older now, slower, tired but still proud. He gathered a fleet, assembled old allies and young hopefuls. Among them, his son, also named Walter, bright and eager, unaware that this voyage would become a shadowed farewell. They sailed south, crossing the Atlantic. The winds were difficult, supplies thinned, morale frayed, men fell ill. The heat in the Caribbean pressed down like a heavy curtain, and when they reached the mouth of the Orinoco, they found no golden city, only thick jungles, disease, and suspicion. Raleigh himself remained aboard ship, too weakened by illness to lead the inland expedition. He knew the crown would not tolerate failure, and so, despite the king's warning, Keimus attacked a Spanish outpost along the river. The battle was swift but bloody. The settlement was burned. Raleigh's son was shot and killed in the fighting. The dream of El Dorado dissolved into smoke. And now the expedition had not only failed, it had violated a royal decree. Word traveled quickly, carried by wind and current. By the time Raleigh returned to England, the court was already prepared. He was arrested again, quietly and without ceremony. There would be no further trials, no second chances. In the early morning hours of October 29, 1618, Raleigh was led to a scaffold in the old palace yard. The crowd gathered in silence, many unsure whether to pity or to condemn. The executioner waited, still and solemn. Raleigh addressed the gathering with calm restraint. He did not protest. He did not plead. He placed his head upon the block with dignity, and asked only for the signal to be given. And with one stroke, it was over. The head of Sir Walter Raleigh fell into the basket, and with it, English skies. He had written once of death, calling it a debt owed by all men, and now he had paid his, not with the grandeur he had imagined for himself, but with the stillness of a quiet morning. There would be no El Dorado, no gold, no redemption, only the creak of ropes in the wind, only the slow retreat of his ship, unmanned and forgotten, as it rocked gently in the harbor. And in that quiet rocking, we returned to the rhythm of the sea, back to the waves, back to the hush of sails in the mist, back to the breath of wind through empty rigging. And as we drift once more into sleep, we remember Raleigh not as a legend, not even as a failure, but simply as a man, flawed, hopeful, and, in the end, still searching. Let the story of Sir Walter Raleigh settle like mist on the water. Let his ship vanish slowly into the past, its sails folding into memory. Now we turn our gaze southward, to warmer seas and hidden currents, to the tropics, where blue water meets coral and cloud, where fleets once sailed in careful formation, heavy with treasure, hope, and dread. We are sailing now along the Spanish Main. It is a name once spoken with awe, with longing, and with fear. It referred not to a single coastline, but to a long sweep of land from the Gulf of Mexico through the Caribbean, touching ports in modern-day Venezuela, Colombia, and Panama. This was the highway of empire, where gold and silver flowed like rivers into the holds of Spanish ships, bound for Europe, bound for the crown. The Spanish treasure fleets, known as flotas, followed set routes. Their cargo was staggering chests filled with silver coins, gold bars, precious gems, fine cloth, spices, and exotic wood. From the mines of and the hills of Mexico, the wealth of the New World was carried by mule, then loaded onto ships anchored in waiting harbors, and from there the long and perilous journey began. You might imagine the glitter of gold, the ornate carvings on the sterns of galleons, the smell of spice and cedar. But beneath all of that, there was always anxiety, always the knowledge that so much could be lost with one storm, one reef, one fire, or one hungry navy. The ships were large but slow, built for carrying weight, not for speed or maneuver. They moved in convoys, guarded by warships. The timing of their departures was planned carefully. Hurricanes were feared more than enemy blades. Crews studied the skies with practiced eyes, watching for signs, the slight change in the wind, the heaviness in the air, the curl of cloud at the horizon. Sometimes, despite every precaution, the storms came. They came fast, loud, and merciless. Rain fell like sheets of stone. Waves rose higher than masts. The air turned white with spray. In such moments, a fleet could scatter. Ships lost sight of one another. Some struck reefs. Others capsized. Still others simply vanished, swallowed whole, leaving behind nothing but floating splinters and the memory of their passing. One of the most tragic disasters came in 1622, when the Nuestra Señora de Atocha, one of the most famed treasure galleons, went down near the Florida Keys. She was part of a fleet caught in a violent hurricane. The Atocha carried silver, emeralds, copper, and thousands of coins. Her hull broke apart on the reef. Nearly everyone aboard was lost. Only a few pieces of the ship remained above water, lashed by the tide. For centuries, treasure hunters dreamed of finding her again. The sea kept her secrets. Well, coral grew over the wreck. Sand shifted with each storm. It was not until the late 20th century that fragments were recovered, coins stamped with the marks of empire, still gleaming faintly in the sun after hundreds of years. But most shipwrecks remain undiscovered. The Spanish Main is dotted with them, scattered across the seafloor like pages torn from a book and left to drift. Each wreck tells a story, if you know how to listen. A cannon resting at an angle, half buried in silt. A rosary lying beneath a broken deck beam. A silver cup rolled into the sand, its handle still intact. Divers who explore these wrecks often speak of the silence, not eerie, but vast, the kind of quiet that feels ancient. The sea muffles every sound. Your own breath becomes a metronome, soft and slow. Schools of fish move through what were once crew quarters. Coral blooms across barrels and ballast stones. Time softens everything. What was once panic, shouting, crashing wood now is only stillness. We think of treasure as something dazzling, but in truth, most of the wealth on these ships was carefully catalogued, wrapped in cloth, or stored in wooden crates. When a galleon sank, its cargo fell layer by layer through the water. Heavy chests went first, straight to the bottom. Lighter objects floated for a while, sometimes carried miles away. Personal belongings, letters, shoes, tokens of home were scattered and lost. Yet the sea remembers. Somewhere below the waves, a pair of spectacles rests in its case, the lenses still whole. A wooden comb lies in the sand. A spoon, a pipe, a leather boot with its sole eaten away. These fragments do not glitter, but they speak more clearly than gold. They speak of the rhythm of daily life, of quiet mornings and long nights. Some fell to war. English, Dutch, and French privateers stalked the flotas, lying in wait near narrow channels or hidden behind islands. When the treasure ships appeared, slow and burdened, the ambushes were swift. Cannon fire echoed across the waves. Hulls cracked, masts splintered, fires caught in the sails. Those who survived the fighting were taken prisoner or abandoned on shore. And then, once again, silence. Wreckage drifted. Names were forgotten. Only the sea remained, constant and vast. Now, centuries later, modern technology scans the seafloor. Sonar maps reveal outlines. Dives are made. Some ships are identified. Others remain anonymous, marked only by encrusted anchors and unbroken tiles. The ocean is patient. It keeps its stories in quiet chambers of salt and silt, letting them sleep. Imagine floating just above one of these wrecks now. The water around you is clear and blue, filtered through the surface far above. Below you lies a trail of stone and iron, disappearing into coral. Perhaps the bell still hangs in place. Perhaps the rudder is visible, half buried. You do not need to speak. You only listen. And you feel, in that gentle stillness, the weight of years, the slow turning of history beneath the waves, the remains of ambition and routine, of risk and failure, resting quietly on the ocean floor. The sea is quiet again. The storm has passed. The wrecks lie far below. And now we rise, gently, as if lifted by a soft current, back aboard a ship. But this vessel is not one of ruin or desperation. Not this time. The decks are clean, the sails trimmed. The lanterns swing in golden pools of light, casting long shadows across polished wood. We are in the captain's quarters now. More precisely, the admiral's. A room tucked at the stern, where the windows face the sea and the world feels a little more still. Let yourself imagine it, the low creak of timbers in the background, like a lullaby, the subtle sway of the deck beneath your feet, the scent of salt air, cut faintly with beeswax polish and old parchment. The door closes softly behind you. Inside, the light is warm. The furniture is sturdy, but worn a broad desk, a narrow bed with a woolen coverlet, and at the center, a long oak table laid for dinner. The admiral, you imagine, is seated already. He is not what one expects, neither fearsome nor flamboyant. He is gray-haired, quiet, and measured in his movements. His uniform is neat but plain, his manner thoughtful. You do not speak, you simply observe. Around him, the officers gather, taking their seats with murmured greetings. It is not a feast, but it is deliberate, ritualized, structured like the order of the watch. The plates are not made of pewter or wood, like those used by the crew below. They are silver, though worn. Each one bears the insignia of the crown, rubbed nearly smooth with decades of use. Cutlery is laid with care. A cloth napkin, folded cleanly. Candles flicker in holders bolted to the table, their flames steady in the still air of the cabin. The food arrives, not all at once, but in slow, considered stages. The ship's steward, perhaps the most trusted hand aboard, brings it forth from the galley. First, a soup, clear broth with small pieces of preserved vegetables, softened by boiling. Carrots, perhaps, onion, a few lentils. It smells faintly of herbs thyme and parsley dried in bundles before the voyage. It is warm and comforting, and most importantly, safe. Then, a portion of salted beef or pork, carefully soaked to remove the worst of the brine, simmered for hours until the meat begins to soften. It is served with ship's biscuit, not the hard, flint-like rations of the lower deck, but a finer version, still dense, still dry, but baked with more care. Some biscuits may be softened in broth. Others are eaten as they are, chewed slowly, sometimes dipped in wine. A small dish of dried fruit follows, prunes, figs, or slices of apple soaked to plump them, occasionally raisins. The sweetness is subtle, a reminder of land. The officers chew slowly, savoring the brief sensation of something not salted, not pickled. If the ship has been at sea for fewer than 2 weeks, there might even be fresh cheese, wrapped in linen and stored in a cool hold, or a small wheel of hard, sharp cheese, scraped thin with a knife. Once gone, it will not be replaced. The admiral takes his meal in calm silence, occasionally nodding to a comment from a younger officer, or asking a quiet question about the weather, the next port, or the day's navigation. There is no laughter, no toasts, only the subdued rhythm of men accustomed to see time, where every moment is functional, every ritual designed to preserve order. It is not luxurious, but necessary. It helps the food to digest. It cleans the palate. It soothes the edge of salt and age. Each officer receives a small cup, no more. The admiral himself drinks last. You notice, on a side table, a decanter of stronger spirits, brandy, perhaps, or something brought from a previous stop in Madeira. Sometimes, for pain, the admiral writes, after dinner. He moves to his desk, opens a heavy ledger, and begins his record. The entries are precise: speed, weather, sail configuration, number of rations consumed, men ill, men punished, sightings of land, signals exchanged. The log is his burden and his shield. If the voyage fails, it may be read in court. If it succeeds, it will become a model for others. His handwriting is even deliberate. He uses sand to dry the ink. He does not pause to reflect. That is not his way. He records, he considers, he plans. Then he closes the book and returns to stillness. Below deck, the men eat in darkness. Their rations are meager. They sit shoulder to shoulder. They dip their biscuit in ale, or in water, if ale has run low. The hammocks swing around them. The noise is louder, more human. Laughter, coughing, snoring. But here, in the admiral's quarters, all is calm. The candle gutters. The maps are rolled and tied. The dishes are cleared. The chairs are stacked. The admiral retires to his narrow bed and lies on his back, eyes open, listening to the creak of the hull, the whisper of the sea outside the glass. He is no tyrant, and yet everything on the ship moves because he wills it so. He is responsible for the discipline of the men, the success of the voyage, the lives aboard. He dreams rarely. Sleep comes lightly, broken by the watch bell, by the knock of the first mate with questions about sail trim or distant lights. He rises, answers, returns to bed. His world never stops moving, a single breath, alone with the sea. And you, dear listener, may now take that breath with him. Inhale softly. The air is dry with wood smoke and sea salt. Let the silence of this chamber wrap gently around you. Let the rocking of the ship lull you. We are no longer in battle, no longer in storm, no longer lost to gold or ambition. We are, for now, simply drifting. And now the voyage draws to a close. The decks are quiet. The lanterns burn low. Somewhere out on the open water, a galleon creaks gently in the darkness, her sails half furled, her men asleep in swaying hammocks, her officers silent in their narrow bunks. We have walked among them tonight, in thought, if not in body. We have stood beside the weary sailor on a 16th century galleon, feeling the hunger gnaw the damp seep in, the salt sting on our lips. We have endured the same long days, the same bitter rations, the same quiet dread of falling ill far from land. We saw the grime of daily life, the slow erosion of hope, the clinging perseverance that carried them forward. We followed Sir Walter Raleigh, whose ambition rose like a great tide, but left behind only broken ships, failed colonies, and a quiet end. His dreams, like so many before and after, scattered with the wind. We drifted above the shipwrecks of the Spanish Main, where treasure and memory sleep beneath coral crowns, gold coins resting in silence, cannon resting in peace. The wrecks speak not of glory, but of how fragile ambition becomes when met by water and time. And we dined, quietly, in the admiral's quarters, silver plates, dried fruit, the illusion of comfort, carefully maintained, discipline masquerading as luxury. We felt the divide between command and common sailor, the solitude of leadership, the slow, ceremonial rhythms of life at sea. The oceans of the past were not grand highways of conquest or wonder, not truly. They were spaces of hardship, of hunger, of damp discomfort. They were worlds afloat, cut off, self-contained, and endlessly vulnerable. The sea held no mercy. It asked much and gave little. Yet again and again men set sail. They chased riches. They chased faith. They chased land. Some never returned. Others returned changed. And their stories, weathered and reshaped by time, have come down to us like waves upon a distant shore. You lie now, safe and still, far from the motion of the tides. There is no weevil in your bread, no damp creeping into your bones, no night watch bell, no groaning timbers, no storm gathering at the edge of sight, only the soft hum of the present, the gentle rhythm of breath, the quiet pull of rest. Let the old galleons drift into darkness now. Let the candles burn down to nothing. Let the logbook close. Let the winds still. The sea is vast and history is long. But tonight there is nothing more you need to do. Nowhere more you need to sail. No command to follow. Only rest, only sleep, only peace. Good night, everyone, and subscribe for more.